is hot, baby. Hot. Woo! Hot fire.
Yeah, what's up, bro? Okay, so I'm back. Yeah, what I'll do is what you need to do, which I was figuring I was going to do that.
It is. It's the Sizzle back in the building, baby. You know how we come to do, and you know what we come to do. We are in the building. Jay Sizzle.
Yeah.
Rich Sizzle.
Yeah.
Oh, baby. Oh, it's hot. It's fire. We are fire in the building. Fire in the building. Fire in the hole. But look, man, we've got to do a recap. We got to do a quick recap to let everybody know that we are true Bulls fans. And we love the Bulls so much that we even watched a presentation. Let's do a deep dive into The Last Dance. The Last Dance. Chance for romance. It's the last dance. Was that a part of that? Wasn't a part of the show, was it?
Not that Dan. No.
Okay. So look, let's do a review. Let's recap going over what we saw in watching The Last Dance documentary on the Chicago Bulls. It talked about everything from the dynasty to Phil Jackson, Scottie Pippen, the mythology and the legend that is MJ, Michael Jordan. And it even spoke about ownership. It spoke about coaching. It spoke about management, everything encapsulated in a mini series. Could you say it's a mini series?
Yeah. Yeah. How many episodes do they have? What, 10 episodes?
Yeah. So it's a mini series of a documentary. How about that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll go with it.
Spinoffs, we'll get to talk about other dynasties after that. They're going to say, because they've already been like, this is the highest rating the ESPN has ever had. So you're going to get some spinoffs.
Well, what other dynasties are there to talk about other than the Michael Jordan Bulls?
Well, we talk about dynasties from your age, like the Celtics.
Yeah, but that's black and white television, basically, at that point.
I'm sure they can figure something out,
You figure, you know what? You're just bad. You're just taking shots unnecessarily. That's a penalty on the field, buddy. I can't just have you taking shots. But look, okay, so with you being the elder statesman here, Jay, basketball aficionado, one who has been in the legacy of the basketball, can you tell us, how can you do this?
Everyone has to do their job. Do your job.
So talk to us, Jay. What was it that you saw when you watched the first part, the initial Michael Jordan and the Bulls dynasty?
It reminded me of that scene out of Goodfellas when the guy was in the trunk and he wouldn't die, and so they just kept stabbing him. That's what they doing to Jerry Krause, man. It's just putting it to him. Ray Liotta is stabbing him in the back of the trunk. Look, man, this is such a beatdown of Jerry Krause. How could you dislike this guy anymore? And I do. I just really don't like him anymore. So look, dude, this is going to be one of those situations. MJ would not have signed on if this was going to be a beatdown of MJ. So this is going to be a smack upside the management's head, and Jerry Krause is going to get one who's going to get his head's going to get smacked the most.
Yeah, it is a bashing. It is, and they're taking a bashing. But Rich Sizzle, let me ask you, what were your thoughts of when you initially saw The Last Dance?
I was like, you remember that feeling when you went to Celebration Station and you just walk in and it's just like, it hits you. It's like, all these games and all these toys. It just took me back to a childhood, because that's what I remembered as a childhood. I fell in love with sports watching the Bulls. I remember the 80s Bulls and things like that. I remember all of that. So it was like great memories. It just wrapped and hugged me. I loved every minute of it. In every show, you got to have some kind of antagonist. So I understand why they went after Jerry Krause. They had to go that hard though. But I had a serious tickle with the what do they call it? The Chicago the cocaine. What do they call that? The Chicago cocaine circus. Oh, that was pure comedy for me.
You know, it's funny that the circus trip, it really was a circus. The amazing part is the greed that you had to have to keep going and doing that circus trip in the midst of a legacy, a dynasty. And I mean, that trip, and in fact, what was it? Last year was the last year they had it, but they've been doing that circus trip for 30 plus years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, let me ask this. Let's throw it back. At Michael Jordan's
He said Michael Jordan, and I think LeBron had smacked him upside the head.
Oh, no.
So he said to Jerry Krause, or he said of Jerry Krause, that he sees him sitting in the audience, but he doesn't know how he got there because he didn't invite him. Is this animosity? Will it ever end, or is this just deep-seated? Is this the way it's going to be?
You talking about with Jerry Krause? I mean, it ended when he died, didn't it? And he did.
No, it didn't end when he's dead, because now they are just piling on now that he is dead. I mean, he has no defense. He needs his wife or his cousin, somebody to come on.
That's like beating a dead horse at this point. I mean, we're talking,
they're going to keep beating him.
he's not. Like I said, I understand in any show you need an antagonist, and to talk about the 98 team, the only antagonist you have outside of Jerry Krause would be the Utah Jazz. Maybe talking about the contracts and Scottie Pippen's injury. But overall, you need that bad guy, so I get that part of it. And there would be a lot of hatred, because you got to think about it. Now, one thing they didn't talk about with the contracts was NBA players were not making the $20, $30 million that they're making now. They weren't making that back then. They were making $2, $3, $4, $5 million. And for Scottie Pippen, even though we talk about that was a bad contract that he signed on for, he explained it pretty well. It's like, forget all this what ifs and that and this and that. I want my money now, instead of gambling to see, is the NBA going to take off like that? Are we going to have these massive salaries and contracts? That was all mystery in 1991. So but Jerry Krause was in the middle of all that. Now we're doing the Monday night quarterback kind of thing, commentating on it. But you have to take yourself back to 91 when that contract was made and things like that.
So let me ask you, Jay Sizzle, did Scottie Pippen's contract, was that a big hindrance, or what give the people who are listening, who may not have seen the documentary and don't understand, give them some background history of what was going on during that time?
Well, during that period of time, just like what Rich said, was that basketball players weren't making $15 million a year like a lot of these players are making right now. $1, $2, $3 million a year was a boatload of cash back in those days, in that period of time. So what happened was that you had Scottie Pippen, who came from a small rural town, basically, in Arkansas, and saw where right now I can get all the money that I'm ever going to spend right now in one shot. I got my whole family taken care of. And I'm sure $18 million right then sounded like $1 billion to Scottie Pippen. Now, here's the funny part. Reinsdorf in the, I think it's episode 2 of The Last Dance, said he had told Scottie Pippen not to sign this deal. And Scottie signed for it anyway. So you really can't cry over this spilled milk. Should the Bulls have went back and renegotiated this deal? No. They shouldn't have went back and renegotiated this deal, because that's going to open up that can of worms for everybody at that point in time. Reinsdorf told him not to sign it. Scottie Pippen didn't bet on himself. And all of a sudden he looked up, he was 122nd highest paid player in the league, when arguably at that point in time, he was one of the top 5 players in the league during that Bulls run. So for the people remember those times, Scottie Pippen, that's why he still has that look on his face today. And he's sitting in court for a bag of popcorn. Anyway, go.
Well, you've got a lot of players now, even current players. You have Draymond Green, who says that the whole Bulls dynasty, and he says the Bulls and the Warriors both dynasties were built on bad contracts. That it's all under investment or under appreciation of value of what these players actually bring. So, can you have a team of fully paid players that are getting what they think they should be worth?
No, not really, especially not with the egos you got going on now. Everybody thinks they're worth $40 million, and everybody's not going to get paid $40 million. You take, even in 98 when Jordan was making $30 million, the rest of the team was making $1 and $2 million. So if you pay your top two players respectively $30 million each, that leaves the rest of your starting five and core players with little to nothing. If you look at the breakdown of teams, and I know we'll get into that later on, you have to have that one or two or possibly three phenomenal players. But then you have to surround that team with adequate role players. You can't just put some want-to-have championship winners around there and hope that they're going to fill their part, fill their play, understand what their role is on the team, and follow that for the $3 or $4 million that they're making. It's very difficult. I understand when we're talking about that, what Jerry Krause was saying is they kind of laughed at him when he said, players don't win championships alone. There's a lot that goes to it. It's like you said, matching whose attitude is what, who really wants to win, who's going to put money aside to do it, and things like that. That is not easy by any means of the imagination.
Well, Jay, let me ask you this. At the time, let's go back to what you said earlier about Scottie Pippen's contract and being re-upped or revisited in some way. At the time, Scottie Pippen, as you said, was the 6th highest paid player on the Bulls and the 122nd highest paid player in the league. Also at that time, this is just how he ranked. And thanks to ESPN for all of their wonderful fact checking, he ranked number 1. He was first on the Bulls in assist and steals, second on the Bulls in scoring, rebounds, and minutes played. But he was, again, 6th in salary just on the Bulls. We're not talking about any other team. We're just talking about on the Bulls. So let's look at his salary in comparison to what his production was. Let's go to what Spot Track said, right? Scottie Pippen made $11 million in salary each of the 5 years that he suited up for Houston and Portland. And in 2002 and 3, he made $19 million. And I believe when he came back to the Bulls, he was making anywhere between $6 and $7 million right there at that minimum. Did he get paid back the money he missed in all of his travels throughout the NBA?
Well, let's say this. If it wasn't for the Scottie Pippen bad contract, we wouldn't have had the Chicago Bulls dynasty. Because that contract was so bad, they were able to bring on players that they could bring on, the Dennis Rodman types, all these type of people. They're able to fit them in and make this work. Scottie Pippen got paid on the back end because he was on this dynasty. On the back end of Scottie Pippen's career, he was a shell of himself. It was more or less, we have part of the Bulls dynasty on our ball club. So did he make back his money? No, he didn't make back his money. Scottie Pippen could have made a lot more money had he been on a better contract, but he wouldn't have had the cachet that he has right now. So you have to ask, would he have been as marketable? Would he have been as wanted if it had just been Scottie Pippen, who would have been great for a couple of years, and maybe he goes to another ball club and they're below 500? We've seen that. Superstars get on ball clubs and they don't play that well because they don't have the people around him. So we can say right now, Scottie Pippen's been living off this for a long time. He's going to continue living off this for a long time. He doesn't have to pay for a drink in the city of Chicago. His popcorn is free. So I think he's still getting residuals. So I think Scottie Pippen's okay.
Okay. So let's move from just Scottie, because there are other players that were involved in this and making this dynasty what it was. So Rich, even though, let's talk about the three-peat. Let's go back. And I know we're isolating right in this year, But what was the impact that Dennis Rodman had on the Bulls during their championship run?
Oh man, Dennis Rodman. If you understand anything about sports, organizations, whatever you want to throw out there, you need that one guy, that one crazy SOB, that person that is that match, that firecracker, that guy that nobody wants to guard, nobody wants to be around, not because he's that good, it's just because he's that crazy. And he's gonna just wear you down mentally, physically, emotionally, everything, all of the above. He was that. He was that when he was with Detroit, when the Bulls had to go to a dark place just to get past the Pistons. He was already there. And then you put him on a Bulls team that just needs that enforcer. Everybody needs that enforcer, that bully. And that was him. I mean, he come in there with the crazy hair. We don't know who he's going to get married to or engaged to any half a second if you want to go through that kind of history and things like that. You never knew what to expect out of Dennis Rodman except for 20 rebounds, 4 points, and a whole lot of headaches from other players because despite him being 6'6", he was jumping out of the building in everybody's face, kicking everybody, pushing everybody around, doing it without the referees even knowing it half the time. I mean, you needed that spark, that kind of, as you want to talk about dynasties, that Draymond Green represents today. Dennis Rodman was already that times 4 or 5. I mean, and he could score if he wanted him to. That's the dynamics of that, of you said, like that 96 through 18. Michael Jordan can't rebound. What does he need to rebound for? He had Dennis Rodman, you know? And like I said, Dennis Rodman only averaged 4 points a game. What did you need him to score for? Mike was averaging 30. You know, they all complemented each other. Dennis Rodman was every bad image that you needed for a good team to have and more.
Yeah, it was amazing when you would watch Dennis Rodman. You would say to yourself, why is he even trying to score? Like, why are you doing that? Where stop, don't shoot. I remember it was a 3-pointer he took, and I was like, why? Why is he doing it? And he made it. And I was like, why'd he do it? Why? There's Jordan, there's Pippen, there's Ron Harper, there's John Paxson, there's somebody else could shoot. I don't know.
You got it.
It had to be somebody.
You got to try one shot at least. I mean,
oh, okay. Well, you know, yeah, I guess. Yeah. I mean, he is a professional basketball player.
Yeah.
I never saw a guy who never shot, never was an effective scorer, but still in the Hall of Fame. That was, to me, that is the true testament of what a Dennis Rodman brings to not only to the Bulls, but what he brought to Detroit.
Yeah, but one of the greatest defenders we've seen in the league. I mean, this guy could defend all 5 positions on the floor. He could defend.
Yeah.
He was going to definitely outwork you. He was going to run you raggedy up and down the court. If you weren't in shape and you had to go run with Rodman, that was going to be a problem. And I'm going to tell you what, Rodman was a lot better on the fast break than what we think. Rodman could get out and run the floor, and he could actually hit some layups. So Rodman was a dangerous ball player, just like you were saying, and he was a perfect complement for that Bulls team that needed that energy.
Yeah, he's one of the players that when you look at now, you try and teach young people to get out on the break, run the floor, get to the other end. I can always remember Dennis Rodman being one of the first out of the backcourt. And he always, if you ask somebody, he always did his job.
Everyone has to do their job.
Mm-hmm.
Do your job.
He's my man. He was my guy. He was my man. But okay, so we go back to you, Jay Sizzle. Outside of Dennis Rodman, who was your Bull that was special between that 96-98 run? Who was that one Bull that you thought he was the dude? He was the glue dude.
I'm gonna tell you who I really was enjoying. I've always liked that he was a schoolmate of mine on the back end, and that was the wonderful coach of the Golden State Warriors right now. He was that John Paxson 2.0. You know,
yes.
He was I thought he was a better player than Paxson. I want to say Kerr was actually a better situational shooter than John Paxson was. And I really thought he had the right demeanor where he wasn't going to be in he was going to be a really good yes sir to Michael Jordan and everybody else around there. He wasn't looking for anything else. And so I think there's a guy who kept the floor spread. And the Bulls were always really great about keeping floor spreaders on the floor. You always had shooters out there. And they kept those guys couldn't defend. They couldn't do anything else, but they could spread the floor and shoot the basketball. I really think Kerr was a big person that the Bulls needed at that time to keep the floor spread so that Scottie and Mike could keep attacking the rack.
You know, it's funny that you talked about that. We were walking over some video and looking at some tape the other day. And even though the Bulls had a specific offensive set they ran and and defensive set piece to the great Tex Winter and all those men who were instrumental in putting it together. But what you saw was a fundamental 5-man motion offense where they had tremendous spacing and then they were able to attack from whatever angle they took. You were able to read that defender, know your angle, and then get to the basket. But when you have a superior isolation player like Michael Jordan, when you have someone who is an elite, the elite of the elite, how do you make that kind of offense work, Jay? How does that offense work to get everybody their touches and get everybody feeling good, but you still had to satisfy Michael Jordan on the other end?
Well, you don't think about Michael Jordan. He wasn't a super ball hog. You know what I'm saying? He was going to get up his shots, but he was getting them up within the system. And he didn't mind deferring. You saw the big pass to Paxson in that run where Michael could have taken that last shot. He didn't. He deferred the ball off. So he was a real system player, but that goes to just how much influence Phil Jackson had on Michael Jordan. And the mere fact that they could run that triangle, and Michael was unselfish in the triangle. I mean, he could take you one-on-one when he needed to, but the whole issue was that if Michael could take you unselfishly, that meant the ball was going to continue to move and the triangle was going to continue to work.
Yeah, it was something of amazement. Rich, had you ever seen an offense like the triangle before? Did you know exactly what that was, even when, you know, we started seeing it and seeing it evolve out of the late 80s? Did you know what that triangle offense was?
No, I still don't know what it is, to be perfectly honest. Ask Carmelo Anthony if he knows what it is, you know?
Oh, God, yeah.
It just
yeah.
I mean, and you have, like you said, a complement of players that could play offensively, that can complement to other components. Like you said, you've got the best offensive weapon of all time, best player of all time, whatever you want to call it. And some of the more raw data that's been coming out since this series about Michael Jordan's shot selection and things like that wasn't that just he was a rim attacker. He would shoot the ball. He would be in good placements. He would actually wait for the defense to set itself up before going in full attack mode. It didn't matter. You weren't stopping him, you know? So it was any offensive scheme you come at with somebody like that is phenomenal because you can't stop him. Didn't matter. Like they were talking about with Dennis Johnson, a known defensive player who could not stop him at home in the playoffs. Yeah. You know, there was no answer for him. So being that there's no answer for him, it's so much easier for every other player, John Paxson, Steve Kerr, Toni Kukoc, even Luc Longley, to get their shots in, because while you're sending your best player, best players, trying to figure out a way to slow down or whatever with Jordan, everybody else has their time to eat.
Yeah, I think that's what you were saying, Jay. Everybody got a chance to really eat at that table. Everybody had a part in that offense. But let's say this. Let me say this. We're going to get ready to go to break in a little bit, and we got to jump in and jump out. But let's do a comparison. Are these Bulls, this team right here, that 97-98 team, are they the best NBA team in the history of the NBA? And I'll throw it to you, Elder Statesman. Are they the best NBA team that we've ever seen?
Well, They're right. I'm going to tell you, you got to look at eras more than you do anything. I mean, how the game is played makes a big difference. Excuse me. If you're looking for spacing, teams who could just space you and just kill you if you left open a shooter, you're looking at some of these more recent teams up here. You're looking at even these LeBron James teams always had a shooter who could kill you. But if you look for that period of time back then where you're still hand checking, you still had the Jordan rules going on, even though they said they weren't happening about during that period of time. They were still taking people out of the air. I want to say probably that team was probably the best team ever assembled, just because you had these great minds all working together. You had Michael Jordan, of course, but I'm going to tell you, the underrated Scottie Pippen, who is never put into the same list of gentlemen as greatest player of all time. You think Scottie Pippen is one of the greatest players, even though he's top 50, but let's put Scottie Pippen where he needs to be in. Scottie Pippen needs to be top 10, top 8 all time. I mean, this guy is fantastic. Let me tell you now, just look at Scottie. Look at his body. Look how he can run. Look how you talking about a defender or scorer. When Michael Jordan took off his little hiatus, and Scottie Pippen almost willed that team himself back into that. If it wasn't for that Hugh Hollins call, the Chicago Bulls would have won a championship without Michael Jordan. So I'm telling you right now, that was a team, I believe, right then, that was one of the best teams ever assembled.
I see, Rich Sizzle, you don't concur and you don't agree with the sage's words of wisdom.
I don't agree. Okay. Without erupting the entire sports world.
Okay.
I am not taking away from Scottie Pippen's greatness. I just would not put him in the top 10. I may not. I definitely would not put him in the top 3 small forwards of all time. Who would I put in front? Okay, LeBron James, Larry Bird, and Kevin Durant. Okay, so moving on. I would say the 97 Bulls team was better than the 98 Bulls team. I mean, we're going to be technical. That 98 team, as we're seeing, had a lot of drama. It had a lot of wear and tear. I mean, you're talking about coming back to back. If you look at the legs of the teams that we have today, and one of the things you realize with the Golden State Warriors and why they could not beat the Toronto Raptors, because they got injured, because they got worn down. And that's kind of what started happening with that Bulls team. That 98 team was worn down after going through 3 straight championships. It's not just as simple as it is winning one championship, but to go again and again. That is what pretty much hurts any player. So that's why you look at like a revitalized LeBron James in this year, because he didn't even make the playoffs last year. So he's fresh. So any team that goes 3 straight is special. But as far as I'm concerned, I think that 97 team was better than the 98 team. And I would say that 97 team could beat any team you put in the history of basketball in any era.
Hey, Rich, let's talk about your second person in your top 3 all-time small forwards there. Do you believe that a Larry Bird, even though he's one of the greatest shooters of all time, do you think Larry Bird, if you put Scottie Pippen into an offense like that, or is focused around him, do you think Scottie Pippen could have been as good as Larry Bird, remembered as good as Larry Bird, or could he have been better than Larry Bird? I'm thinking because Scottie Pippen had to play Robin this entire time, he never got featured, and I think that's why he's underrated for the type of ball player he was. Scottie Pippen, look, Larry Bird was nowhere near the defender Scottie Pippen was. He couldn't run the floor like Scottie. He was fast, but he couldn't run the floor like Scottie. Now, could he outshoot Scottie? Yeah, but he took way more attempts than Scottie Pippen did. So what I'm saying is that I think this is one of the reasons why I believe, because he was robbing all the time. He never wore the cowl. He never got to drive the backbone. That we look at Scottie Pippen for not who he really was, and I really believe Scottie Pippen was one of the top 10 players to ever play in the league.
Well, with the talk about Larry Bird, first of all, Larry Bird would come into the league as that guy, and everybody knew he was that guy. If you go back to college when he played against Magic, it was Magic in the Michigan State Monstars against Larry Bird. That's why they lost.
Yeah.
But just Larry Bird. And then you go with the Celtics team. And I'm not saying anything about that Celtics run because they had some great players, but
You have 4 Hall of Famers on there.
Larry was that guy. And
You have 4 Hall of Famers on that team, though.
But who was the guy, though? It was Larry
I understand
Bird.
that, but look at the compliments he had around him, though.
But, when you start talking about the Detroit Pistons, it was a coin toss between Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars. When you start talking about the Lakers of that era, it was a coin toss between Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Magic Johnson. There was never any dispute. Larry Bird was that guy. Larry Bird had heart. When everybody said, stop talking about this, and that, and I'm not saying Scottie Pippen didn't have heart. Larry Bird had heart. He literally, his body broke down on him. That's what ended up causing his decline because he put everything out on the floor. So that's why I have to put Larry Bird up there amongst Scottie Pippen, not taking anything away from him and not saying anything about that bad call, but that Bulls team in 94 got eliminated in the semifinals, not the finals. They didn't even make it to the Eastern Conference Finals or anything else like that. I'm not taking anything away from that, but that was your time to shine. Come H to high water, forget one bad call. We're still going to win this. I'm going to figure out a way to do this so I can accessorize my legacy. He didn't do it. He didn't capitalize on it.
I mean, it's a really compelling point. It's a compelling point to see when you ask yourself, how many championships did Larry Bird lead the Celtics to? How many championships were won with Scottie Pippen as a Bull? To me, it's a really interesting argument because I've heard a lot of people make it, but I have heard a lot of people discount and discredit Scottie Pippen for his value to the team because it was always Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen.
How many championships did Michael Jordan win without Scottie Pippen?
Right. Zero.
Zero. Absolutely none. And absolutely none. So the big violin we broke out.
Wow, that was the extra large violin, my friend. That was the super grande violin.
How is that a comparison?
Because they'll tell you just how great Scottie Pippen was. I mean, before he got there, look, Michael Jordan made Scottie Pippen. We're going to say that's the absolute truth. But Scottie Pippen, when he came into the league, Scottie Pippen had all the tools, all of them. He was 6'7", could run like a deer. He had guard handles. Scottie Pippen had everything that you wanted. And look, Jerry Krause. What a phenomenal job he did to make that move to go get Scottie Pippen. I mean, it was because of him the dynasty got started, I do believe, but it's also because of him that dynasty folded up. But we'll find that out as the series goes along. But I mean, Scottie Pippen, man, I tell you, overall, he's one of the best basketball players we've seen in the history of the game.
Me personally, if I can jump in there real quick, they don't give Jerry Krause as much credit as what they should. And I'm going to say that. I know I'm getting some bad looks. This is why. Realistically, there wasn't, if you look at the history, the legacy of Michael Jordan, that Bulls team, there really wasn't too much more that they could accomplish beyond that 98 season. There were injuries coming into play. People, I mean, just like anything else, you're being around somebody long enough, it has its time. Just like at a home, you got 18 years, and after age 16, as you all know, that kid gets on your nerves. You got to go out to college, got to go here, got to go there. That team, there was nothing more that team could accomplish. There was nothing more
and
Jordan couldn't.
It really wasn't, but we're going to talk about that on the other side. We're going to wrap and take a break real quick, and when we come back, we're going to talk about, could this Bulls team beat the Golden State Warriors?
Oh.
Hey man, your hair's a mess. You better call somebody to get the best haircut you can find, and that's Brandon Washington at Cold Cuts Barbershop. Yeah, I know. You don't know what it's about. But let me tell you about Brandon Washington. He's a master barber with over 20 years of barbering experience. Brandon Washington and Cold Cuts Barbershop, 1223 Broadway, Gary, Indiana, 46407. And you can give him a call for an appointment at area code 219-793-2822. 219-793-2822. Cold Cuts Barbershop. All right, Jay, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
If I need car towed, I need some work done, where do I need to go?
Man, look, I'm going to tell you right now. You need to get over to CNA Auto over there on 93 East Main Street in Chicago Heights, Illinois.
Really?
You know why?
Why?
Because they fix everything. They fix your car. They don't break your wallet. You know what I'm saying? They do a good job over there. They got car. If you need a car, you come and buy your car. You can get your whips and roll up out of there.
Just roll out?
Roll out. Roll out. Just skirt. Look, they sell fine cars. They fix them even better. They're open Monday through Fridays, 8 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Call 708-758-2855. That's 708-2855. That's CNA Auto Repair and Towing. Go get you a car.
You know who it is. You know what it is. It's the Sizzle, baby, here on Iron Skillet Radio. The Sizzle, the talk of the 219, the best talk in the 219. Listen, while we're sitting here, we're talking about the 97-98 Chicago Bulls, the legacy, the dynasty, the last dance, the end of an era. This is how it all stops. This is how it all goes down. It went down. Down, baby. It went down. Down like Frazier. Down like the Towers. Down like big girls on little slides. It went down, baby. It was going all the way down. But listen, can we talk about this real quick? On the other side, we talked about how good this team was. But can we actually talk about who was on this team? And can I give you some names? Can I give you a few names? Just
yeah.
Okay. Randy Brown, Ron Harper, Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan, Dennis Rodman, Jud Buechler, Steve Kerr, Rusty LaRue, Dickey Simpkins, Toni Kukoc, Joe Klein, Luc Longley, Bill Wennington, Scott Burrell, and Keith Booth.
Who? Those last two, I was like, who?
Remember Scott Burrell? He had the ball head.
I'm
He looked
joking.
like the basketball. Yeah.
I'm just joking. I know all the names well, but it's like
Yeah.
it's a lot of other people out there like, who? You know, Bill Wennington,
Yeah, it was. It was a who. It was like a whole team of who is that? Who is what? Okay, so look, the only thing I can remember was Toni Kukoc was this phenom, European phenom. There was a 3-point sniper, and he came to the NBA and decided to be. I don't know what he decided to be.
Hey, don't disparage Toni Kukoc.
Can I jump in there?
No.
Real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's give history a quick history lesson. The Dream Team of '92. Toni Kukoc was a Bull back then. I think technically the '92 and '93, but I digress. Toni Kukoc in Croatia, wherever he was considered the Michael Jordan of European basketball. He was that dude out there. I think he was hitting 100-point games out there. I mean, he was a big talk. He was a big deal out there in the early 90s.
He was one of the premier players in the world, not just European players. He was one of the best in the world. But the question was, what did he become? Because he never subscribed to the theory that he was a role player. So what was Toni Kukoc in the grand scheme of it? Because let's look at this. If we're saying Scottie Pippen was a small forward, are we saying that Kukoc was your starting power forward?
He was a stretch player. I think if you want to go history, Toni Kukoc might have been the gateway for players like Dirk Nowitzki and them to come overseas with that 7-foot body, hitting threes and making unpredictable shots. Because when you look at a 7-foot player, you expect him to be a rim player, rebounder, shot blocker, and things like that. And I'm not taking away Toni Kukoc, decent, but his bread and butter was shooting the ball. You know, like a lot of stretch fours playing in the league now that are 7 foot, they can shoot the ball. He started that DNA rolling, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was to me, was a trendsetter. He was the the trailblazer. He was the forerunner in really European players who had handles that weren't a specific. They weren't a 3. They weren't a 4. They were that, what you just said, Rich. They were the preeminent stretch. They were that player that came in that could play different roles. Because if I remember correctly, at some point they would put Mike on the point. You had Scottie still at the 3, and then Toni would run the 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then he could move from the 2 to the 4. And in small lineup sets, he would play the 5 when they had their shooting sets. When they had Ron Harper out there, they had Steve Kerr at the point. So you would put Steve Kerr at the point, Mike at the 2. You'd have Scottie at the 3. You'd have Ron Harper at the 3. Scottie would play the 4, and then Toni Kukoc would play the 5 in those fast lineups and those small lineups. Where they gave people fits with their lineup. And then you still had your bigs coming in. You had a glut of bigs with Wennington, Luc Longley. You had guys, you had true bigs who came in and played bigs now. So I asked the question before we went to break. I posed it, wanted to see what everybody thought. Could this Bulls team, this 97 team, and to Rich's point, I may not consider this the best team in the dynasty, best out of the 6 teams, this edition of them. But could this edition, this team right here, could they beat the best of any of whatever you want to take the Golden State Warriors in their dynasty run? Could they beat them in a 7-game series?
Everybody knows they Golden State Warrior fan. I enjoy the Warriors. I enjoy how they play basketball. I think in this era, they're probably one of the best teams assembled with that backcourt that can just light it up. But to go back and say, can that Chicago Bulls team with Kerr, with Pippen, with Toni Kukoc, could they beat the Warriors? Absolutely right. They would jab slap the Warriors. Look, you're talking about 2 of the greatest defenders that ever played basketball play for the Chicago Bulls. You also got a guy who can stretch. Kerr can stretch him out. Who's going to guard Toni Kukoc? Who's going to guard him? He's going to drag whoever he is. He's going to drag him out to the 3-point line. And people don't realize his nickname over in overseas was called the waiter. Because he was serving it up to people. He could dish it. That big guy could break people down. He could actually play the point guard position. So it would have been too much offense, too much defense. There's no way the Golden State Warriors would be able to play physically with this ball club. They would just be getting knocked down, knocked all over the place. It would have been too much Michael Jordan, too much Pippen. That's a slaughter fest waiting to happen. The Warriors would be lucky if they won a ball game in that series.
Wow, that's a revelation. Because what do you do with a player like Kevin Durant? Would he not be the equalizer for those Bulls teams and putting those teams together?
First thing, Kevin Durant. Which era are we playing in? That's number one. Are we playing in? Are we playing in the Bulls era? Or are we playing in the era now?
Yeah, see, that's the question. Are we playing in the hand check era? Are you playing in this?
Because I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm taking Dennis Rodman. And I'm going over there and I'm putting him on Kevin Durant, and there's going to be a lot of crying going on. No, there's going to be a lot of crying going on because Dennis Rodman is going to beat on him, knock him down, do whatever he's got to do. He's going to bridge him. He's going to do everything he's got to do to him. And secondly, he's going to make Kevin Durant have to rebound. He's going to have to go to because Dennis Rodman's going to own the boards. Draymond Green is not keeping Dennis Rodman off the glass. Dennis Rodman has got too much energy. He's super strong. Look at the guys who Dennis Rodman played against, the Karl Malones of the league, all those type of big guys like that, where you had actually massive fours out there. You don't have that like that in the league right now. This Bulls team would just be too big, too physical, too powerful for that Warriors team, and there'll be a beatdown going on.
Rich Sizzle, what do you think? What are your thoughts on the Warriors versus the Bulls?
Hand check or no hand check era, hands down Chicago Bulls. And I'll almost be as ballsy to say pick any of the 6 teams.
Yeah.
First of all, the crying out disadvantage is coaching. I don't. Steve Kerr's cool, but Phil Jackson coached Steve Kerr, so there you go. And like I said, hand checking and no hand checking. In the hand checking era, Michael Jordan averaged 30 points a game. In the no check hand checking era, how many points would you think he averaged? Probably about 40, 45. And then his game seemed to get better in the playoffs anyway. There was no answer, will be no answer for him offensively for anybody to play against him. You're going to put Iguodala on Jordan? I don't think so. You're going to put Durant on Jordan? I don't think so. And then like Jay says, Dennis Rodman would have completely given that entire team fits. If Tristan Thompson gave that Warriors team fits on the glass, what do you think Dennis Rodman would have done? It like, I'm gonna give him one game just because that just seems like the Bulls don't want to just like completely vaporize you. They'll give you one game. They might even give you two just so they can go home and celebrate on their own home floor in fashion and style. But it's definitely the Bulls all the way.
Okay, well, since we have a unanimous vote here, I can't really give you a good argument that would say that at any point I could see the Warriors beating the Bulls in a 7-game series. Even if you take it either era, if you put it in the Bulls era, definitely not. But even if you put it in the new era, just as Rich said, what would you do with a Michael Jordan? I mean, if you couldn't stop him with the hand check, you couldn't set your defense to stop him, how would you stop him from averaging 40, 50 a game? I don't see how it's possible.
And mind you, Michael Jordan wasn't a flopper either. So the fouls he were going to get were going to be legitimate fouls. I mean, heck, half the fouls he got would have been flagrants anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. So, I mean, it's really, to me, a very interesting question. And it's one that history, I think, will, and as younger generations of NBA players and NBA viewers come in, they'll argue the point that, you know, you have a LeBron James who was better than Michael Jordan, or a Kevin Durant who's better than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, or Shaquille O'Neal that was better than Wilt Chamberlain. I think it's all perspective based. It's all from what angle you're looking at it from. But with whenever angle you're looking at it from, when you look at the dynasty, you look at the Bulls and what they were able to do in those multiple three-peats, there is no other team in the history of basketball. And I'll even throw in some of the older Celtics, that dynasty. I don't think there's another team that's been able to do what the Bulls did in such a short amount of time and be as effective and be as great as they were. Now, I could be wrong. And so I'll leave that up to you guys to debate if I'm wrong or not. But I think the Bulls, be it probably one of the best teams in sports history.
Yeah.
Well, definitely. Go ahead, Rich.
When you talk about the Boston era, we're talking about an 8-10 team era. So it's not a fair comparison necessarily. Like I said, I'll let somebody who may have actually witnessed some of those games talk about that, but I just don't. I think that the mechanics of basketball has increased tremendously over a 27-year span, to the point of when you go back into the Bulls era and talk about offensively, you think about that those games in the 90s were ending in 80, 90, 100 points. They rarely went, 120 points. That's the average nowadays. So like I said, when you average 20 to 25 points a game in the 80s and 90s, what would you be averaging today? It might be in the 30s and 40s of what James Harden's doing now. And then that just puts, people like Michael Jordan in a whole nother comparison. I can't really think of another team that might even come close to what the Bulls accomplished, or their style of play, their coaching, their raw ability and talent, and their discipline going into the game. I mean, like we've talked about with the contract. How many of those players would have just says, I'm not playing for, who's going to play for $1.5 million today, or $2 or $3 million today, that can go somewhere else and make 10 times that, if not more? It's just not going to happen. You talk about players that sit out entire years and things like that. Oh yeah, that would have been in full effect today.
And you know the thing that's amazing about that, Rich, just what you said. You know, at the end of that 95-96 season, Jordan only made $3.8 million that year. That was right before he signed a big $30 million contract.
Mhm.
So the Bulls are a hybrid of old school and new school. And I think that's the reason why they're the most dominant team, I think, out there. They could have played in the old school era, in that 1980s basketball when it was just WWE wrestling going on out there. And, you know, we had Rudy Tomjanovich getting knocked out, and you just had guys regularly fighting out there on a regular basis. And you got this new school basketball where everybody's just pretty, and they don't play no defense a la James Harden, and they're just going to keep putting up the ball, putting up 30, 40 shots a game without any consequence. And I think the Bulls could have translated and played in any era. That's why I think they're the greatest basketball team out there ever played.
Okay, so we'll leave it there. We'll leave it at the greatest basketball team that ever played, because I know we got to get ready to get out of here. People got things to do. They got places to be. They got stuff that's got to happen. I don't know what stuff is got to happen, but it's got to be a lot of stuff that happens for people out there. So we're going to leave it there. How about that? We'll leave it there and say that the Bulls are the greatest team ever. How about that? Can we say that? Ever?
Yeah. I think they're the greatest basketball team ever assembled. I think the greatest team to ever play together was that first Dream Team. But now that's asking, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, that's not.
You can't do that, my friend. You can't, because now we got a whole nother podcast we got to talk about, man.
I'd say that right there, that's not fair, because guess what? They had that team assembled. This tells you how good Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen were. That they says we don't want our rivals on that team. They said that. They was like, we're not playing with Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars. In today's Super Friends League, where there are no rivals, that wouldn't have happened. They says, no, that's not happening. We ain't playing with them. So they replaced it with Clyde Drexler and company. Now that adds to the legacy of that Chicago dynasty right there, talking about the Dream Team.
Yep.
There you go. There's an add-on. And you know what's an add-on? Those of you who need to be following us via Instagram, Twitter, wherever you are, you need to look up Iron Skillet Sports. We're there. And you know what, fellas? We got a new chat we're going to do on Facebook. We got a group. The Sizzle Brothers are going to be in the building.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to do some exclusive content. Man, we got a lot coming up. Man, after we COVID, woo, baby, we're going to be out in these streets. We're going to do it. We're going to open it up like Atlanta's getting ready to do.
Hey, real quick. Hot off the press, Rob Gronkowski just got traded to the Bucks.
Wow! What? Come on, one more time, baby.
ESPN says the Patriots are trading Gronkowski and a 7th round pick to the Bucks for a 4th rounder pending a physical.
Hey, that's the last dance going on down there with the Bucks, man. Come on, one more time, baby. Let's go win one.
You like that? You like that?
You know what's amazing though with that? I think you're going to see a lot of players trying to get down there to go play with Tom Brady.
Look at my face. I don't even know what to say. No, I'm not gonna. No, don't you say it. Don't you say it. Don't you say it, Batman. Don't you say it. I'm not gonna. I'm looking at you. You don't. Don't you do it. Bullets. I can't do this with you all. You are ridiculously silly. Yeah. Listen, if you're not following us, again, follow us on Instagram, Twitter. You can find us right wherever you need to find a podcast. We're there. We're the Sizzle. We're the talk of the 219. Iron Skillet Sports. You can find us. And, hey, join the chat in Messenger. Oh, baby. Messenger is where it goes down, where you get all the hottest information. And I know Q is probably all over this trade. He's going to give us all information, all trade-wise, as to what's going on. So we'll know by the end of this segment, we'll know everything that's going on.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so, brothers, let me throw it out to you first. Rich says, well, what are your parting words? Give the people something that they like.
You like that? You like that?
Hey, look here, man. I I know where the party's gonna be at once we can get up out of the house. It's gonna be G Sizzle's house. I'll give you the later.
It's gonna be here with some chicken wings, baby.
Oh, yes, sir.
It's gonna be a wing. It's gonna be a wing explosion, a wingtography. It's gonna be a wingtosion. Can that be a sizzle word? A wingtosion?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Well, look, I know one of the sizzle words, the wild word of the week, is always going to be, oh, baby, you need to hear this. You need to hear the twofer. Telling you on the next podcast, we're going to tell everybody about the twofer, man. We're going to tell them what the twofer is. Jay Sizzle, leave the people with something they like.
Look, man, this is out of my, I'm sorry about that. I like it. This is out of my COVID-19 Containment Chronicles book. Don't eat Oreos after a tuna fish sandwich. Don't do
it. For Rich Sizzle, for Jay Sizzle, I'm G Sizzle. You know what it is. You know who it is. It's the Sizzle here on Iron Skillet Radio. We are gone.
Oreos.
That's what the toilet paper shortage is all about.
I gotta go.
Hey, can you see G Sizzle over there, Rich?
No, he's been blacked out for the past 25 minutes. I'm like, what is this? You know,
G Sizzle, you're in quarantine, man. Did you know that?
I thought he was like on the toilet or something. I'm like, where'd he go?
Bad man, daddy.